There's a cry that pierces the night, not human, not animal, but something in between. A sound so chilling, it's said to signal death itself. If you've ever heard the legend of the Banshee, you know it's not just a ghost story, it's a warning. And those who've heard her scream, never forget it. But who, or what, is the Banshee? A grieving spirit? A harbinger of death? Or something even older? Tonight, we take a journey deep into Celtic mythology, to meet the woman who doesn't kill, but cries for the dying. The ancient legend of the Banshee originates from the misty lands of Ireland. The word Banshee is derived from an old Celtic term meaning, fairy woman. In various accounts, she appears either as a small, hunched old witch with tangled white hair, or as a tall, thin woman with long, flowing silver locks. But above all, she is most famous for her chilling, supernatural wail, a piercing cry that can travel for miles, breaking through the silence of the night. It is said this otherworldly lament announces the death of a family member, a sorrowful warning echoing from the beyond. In early tales, banshees didn't scream. They sang long, mournful songs called keening, to grieve those about to pass. Over time, her lament grew sharper, louder, turning from song to shriek. Some believe she's a guardian spirit, tied to specific bloodlines. A spiritual midwife, ushering souls from this world to the next. Others think she's an ancient elemental being, a remnant of a time when the veil between worlds was thinner, and death was a sacred transition. Modern sightings continue to this day. People across Ireland, Scotland, and even parts of America have reported hearing a woman's wail right before a tragedy strikes. But what's fascinating is this: the Banshee doesn't cause death. She merely announces it. Her cry isn't one of malice. It's one of sorrow, of knowing what's coming, and being powerless to stop it. Now, let's rewind to a story shared by the late Sylvia Browne, a world-renowned psychic, spiritual teacher, and best-selling author. Known for her sharp insight into the unseen realms, Sylvia traveled the world uncovering spiritual truths. But it was during a trip to the misty hills of Ireland in 1978 that she had one of her most unforgettable encounters. What she experienced there would leave a lasting mark on her soul and deepen her understanding of the bridge between life and death.
It was 1978 and I was on my first trip to Ireland. Everything about the paranormal fascinated me then, and to be honest, it still does. It was a long journey, filled with in-person meetings, and by the time we checked into our hotel, I was physically exhausted but mentally buzzing. My husband had no trouble sleeping. He'd knock out right after dinner. But I hadn't yet adjusted to the time difference, and my adrenaline was still high. So I decided to step outside the hotel for a little walk, hoping it would help me unwind before bed. You don't have to be psychic to feel something different in a land as ancient as Ireland. History doesn't just live in the books there, it lingers in the air. As I wandered through the quiet streets, my mind drifted to images of Vikings, old farmers, and the famine victims of centuries past. I didn't even notice when the little shops had closed, or when the thick Irish mist rolled in around me, turning the town into something that felt older, quieter, almost sacred. What pulled me back from my thoughts was a sound I will never forget. It was the most piercing, soul-wrenching and unearthly scream I had ever heard in my life. It didn't just hit my ears, it sank into my bones. I froze. Terrified, I spun around, trying to locate the source of the cry, but the fog had scattered it into 1,000 pieces. It felt like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere. For a second, I thought it had to be someone in horrible pain. But I've heard the cries of women giving birth, and I've heard the moans of those on their deathbed, and none of them sounded like that. Now, I don't scare easily. I've been through a lot in my life, psychically, emotionally, physically, and I've faced things most people would run from. But that scream, that night, that fog, it shook me. I honestly don't even remember how I got back to the hotel. I just remember bursting into the room, crying, shaking, and waking my husband in the middle of the night. And you know what he did? He sat up, half asleep, looked at me with those Irish eyes, his heritage strong on both sides of the family, and listened as I breathlessly recounted every detail. When I finished, he shrugged and said, you probably heard a banshee." Me? I didn't sleep a single minute. A banshee? Sure, I'd heard about them before, but I never thought they were real. And even now, I wasn't convinced. That scream still echoed in my ears. The next morning, I went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. As I sipped my tea, I overheard the server speaking to a local man at the next table.
"Did you hear about Mrs. O'Flaherty? Passed away last night."
"No. God rest her. What happened?"
"Her son says it was a heart attack. Happened real quick. She was 83. Had a strong heart, God bless her."
My ears perked up. I turned to them and politely asked, "Excuse me, do you know where she lived?" The Irish, bless them, are some of the warmest people I've ever met. The server smiled and said,
"Oh sure, just about 1 kilometer from here. Lovely home, been in the family for generations. Her great-grandfather built it."
That was interesting, sure, but my mind was on something else. I asked, did her son mention what time she passed?
"Yes, actually. He was on the phone with her when it happened. Said it was right at 9:30 p.m.
Quite a shock. I remember checking the clock when I returned to the hotel the night before. It was a few minutes past 10. I would swear on my life, as a medium, a scholar, and a trained psychic, that I wanted nothing more than to understand what really happened that night. If banshees were real, then what were they? Where did they come from? What role did they play in the spirit world? And if they weren't real, then what the hell was that scream? In the end, when my usual tools of logic and research failed me, I did what I always do. I turned to the most trustworthy source I had. Francine, my spirit guide. According to Francine, that terrifying keening sound, the one heard across Ireland for centuries, is the result of a collision between the physical world and the spirit realm. When a soul leaves the body, it doesn't just disappear. It undergoes a massive shift. Its frequency changes, rising sharply as it crosses from this world into the other side, like lightning cutting across dimensions. In that process, the soul sends out incredibly powerful telepathic signals to loved ones, not as a warning, but as a farewell. And those signals, crossing the layers between worlds, create an energetic surge so strong that it sometimes becomes audible. Sometimes that's what people hear as a banshee's scream. And if you factor in Ireland's famously thick fog and sky-high humidity, conditions that enhance and carry energy, it's not hard to see why this phenomenon has been rooted in Irish folklore for so long. Maybe the banshee isn't a woman in white or a ghostly wraith. Maybe she's something even more mysterious.
Perhaps the most haunting truth about the banshee is not her scream, but but the silence that follows. A silence that settles like fog over the soul, whispering that the unseen world is always closer than we think. Whether she is an ancient spirit bound to family bloodlines or a forgotten goddess mourning the mortality of man, one thing is certain: the Banshee isn't just a myth. She's a mirror held up to our deepest fear, loss, and a reminder that death is not the end, but a passage. So the next time you feel a chill, or hear a cry in the night that no one else does, pause. Listen. Maybe it's just the wind. Or maybe, she's near. If stories like this stir something deep within you, an echo you can't quite explain, you're not alone. Subscribe for more journeys into the mysterious and metaphysical. Drop a comment: have you, or someone you know, ever heard something that couldn't be explained? Let's keep this portal open. Together.